rebel comes screaming, we always holler back to 'em.
For the Article 5 convention. It's, we're not going to propose amendments or anything like that. That's way premature. And, we're not elected to do that. I don't think anybody is going to try to suggest this is what should be and then take it back to their legislatures immediately and say we're going to pass this or that. There's going to be a true convention of the states just to gather the proposals together, then take back to their legislatures to petition for it. So there'll be a couple of large national meetings before anything gets going to where you have, I suppose, almost hopefully unanimity on what we should be amending into the Constitution. It's going to have to be limited. Mark Levin talks about 11 different amendments. That's not practical. It would scare everybody. There's too much there. And he even says, I don't expect all this to get done at once, or a lot of this may never happen, but this is what I think needs to happen, maybe over time. And so you'll see a limited process, thoughtfully developed, with momentum building toward hopefully an Article 5 convention sometime in the future, and hopefully soon.
Speaking, how long would this process take from beginning to end to achieve an Article 5 constitutional amendment?
6 days and not 6 years. How's that for as vague as you can get? Somewhere in between that. It's going to take, I would say that it's very possible that you could have a proposed, and maybe likely you'll have a set of proposed amendments by the end of next year, if things go correctly, that could then go to the states for consideration. And then the process of having 34 states propose a like-minded amendment, which your delegates would have to be agreeing to, to live within those limits. You vote for this and nothing else, which is what we've said in Indiana already and what we hope the other states will say. I think they will. So you're talking 2015 at the earliest, if this catches fire, and maybe longer than that. But I think you'll see calls for convention coming out of the 2015 legislatures with specific amendments. I'm hoping. And it may seem like a long time. This can move very quickly and rapidly if done correctly, and if it has momentum and it has consensus and it's been thoughtfully put together such that no one can say, if you do this, you'll never control it. I think you can, but only if the people putting this together put that fence around it with the laws we passed here in Indiana or something like it, as well as a very strict set of rules for how a convention will be run. And I think under those circumstances, which is the way they used to do it, the way we can do it too, under those circumstances we can move fairly swiftly. So, by the way, that's my opinion, okay? I mean, I'm hoping that that's the process it takes, the timeline, but I don't know for sure.
And I'll out this person. This question was submitted by Mr. Dave Armstrong, and we might all guess what the question is going to cover. But
who's Dave? Yeah, I did.
On November 15th, just 11 days ago, Congressman Jim Bridenstine from Oklahoma introduced House Joint Resolution HJR 104, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to repeal the 16th Amendment. For this proposed amendment to be submitted to the states for ratification, it must first receive a favorable vote, 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate, which is doubtful. Is repealing the 16th Amendment an issue for the states to champion through the Article 5 procedure?
You tell me. I don't know. I haven't even focused on that. So
we need to talk.
I focused on the 17th and others, but yeah. Hmm?
17th Amendment. Gets rid of the 16th Amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's an interesting concept. I mean, I personally, I have so much emotion about taxes like you all do that I'd probably say, why not, right? But I do think that there are variations within that theme in modern America that I'm more of a flat tax person or some other type of tax, something simple.
That's because you haven't talked to me yet.
All right. So you've got a better way, but I mean, people talk about consumption taxes and whatnot, and But usually that goes on top of an income tax, and that's what makes me nervous about them. So, I can't tell you I've ever been able to come up with the right balance, except I know we take too much out of people's wallets. It's too much, it's too wasteful, it's unnecessary, and a whole lot of people don't have any skin in the game anymore on taxation. And when that happens, you're starting to raid the treasury to help people pay themselves. That was a warning I think Ben Franklin put out, didn't he? When that happens, democracy's in deep trouble. So I think some major tax reform is required, whether it's the elimination of the income tax at this point, 100 years later. Attractive as it sounds, I'm not sure you can pull it off, but you can reform it, and we need to. So how's that? We can agree to talk. Okay.
We can agree to talk.
All right, Dave. Thanks.
Things are dealing with state amendments, Defense of Marriage Amendment or Gay Marriage Amendment. According to Mayor Ballard of Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, Cummings Diesel, and several university presidents in Indiana, the passing of a gay marriage amendment would contribute to the ruining of Indiana's economic future. Does that mean that a person has to be connected to the heterosexual community to be superior in handling Indiana's economy? We, the people of Indiana, expect our public servants like you, Senator Long, to have this issue on the ballot for the fall of 2014. What do you say about this issue?
We've been dealing with this issue since 2003, and it is really a difficult issue because of the fact that it used to be an 80% issue without question in Indiana. Now it's 55% because the young generation doesn't agree with this position. They don't understand it, and they feel like it reflects a position that they can't support politically, and they tie it to Republicans. Republicans are struggling with this. I've got young Republicans who are conservative and pro-life and pro-marriage and everything else, but they say, my marriage is defined by my religion and not by the state, and therefore, why are we worrying about this? And it's a generational thing. And it's probably the most difficult subject. You think about the things we've tackled in Indiana, things like right to work, the emotion that went with that. That pales in comparison to this. It really does. It's very difficult. The Speaker of the House and I talk all the time about this. The controversy about it is the second section of this amendment. And it is exactly the same language as what is in the constitutions of Wisconsin and Kentucky today. But when they put it in their constitution, it was about an 80 to 85% positive issue, and now it's trending to about 50-50 in Indiana as well as other states. The second section basically says that anything substantially similar to the concept of marriage is also not recognized in Indiana. And the opponents of the marriage amendment are attacking it, saying, well, that prevents private sector from providing benefits to same-sex couples. Now, I don't know about you, but frankly, I don't care about that. If a business wants to, Dave's business wants to provide, benefits to a same-sex couple, I don't care about that. That's their business, all right? This is America, all right? That's a different issue from talking about what is marriage, okay? And that's how the attack is going to go on this thing. And it's potentially a persuasive one. I've seen legal briefs from some who are opposing it, who have had some high-flying, very powerful law firms say, yeah, that's exactly what it does. I've seen others from the Indiana Family Institute that says, no, it doesn't do that. And so you have these competing high-powered legal opinions. But putting doubt into this, in people's minds who support traditional marriage, but question why the state may have overreached on the second stanza of this amendment is where the fight is going to be. For some, it's just allow it or don't allow it, and I understand that. But a lot of the people in between, it's this second sentence that says basically you can't have a domestic partnership or a civil union. And for young people, they don't get that at all. They wonder why we care. They say that doesn't affect traditional marriage. There's marriage, and then there's these things. That whole debate's going to happen out there, and it complicates the whole discussion. The question is, will you let it go to the people? And I think ultimately, the odds are that that's what's going to happen. That's not David Long's decision. I'm not going to stop anything from coming to the floor.
Yeah.
My caucus will decide this, okay? But But on where they want to stand, it's going to be an individual decision, I think, of our members of the Senate. I think the Democrats in the Senate, 13, they're probably 13 strong opposing at this time. Maybe one will peel away. 2 years ago, it passed 40-8 in the Senate. 40-8, with 3 Democrats voting for it. They won't be anywhere near that close this time. And the reasons are, as I just explained, some people think we overreach. Some people think we should start over and get rid of that second clause. Some people saying, I've changed my mind. There are others who are going to say, I've not changed my mind. This is a matter of a moral issue for me. And I understand all of those opinions. It is a very tough moment for a legislator right now. And it's very appealing to say, let's just let the people decide this. And maybe that's the right answer in the end. You know, in Indiana, when we amend the Constitution, it isn't easy either. It takes 2 consecutive General Assemblies to do it, which in a General Assembly is 2 years. So you have one elected body, votes on it 1 of 2 years. You have an election, and then you have another elected body, vote on it 1 of those 2 years. And if that happens, in 2 consecutive General Assemblies, it goes to the public in the next general election. So if we passed it this next year in the spring, it would go to the fall, November, to the ballot. If we changed it in such a way and took out that second clause, you would pass it this year, you would pass it next year, and it would be in the November 2016 election if it came to a vote then, without the second clause. And some people may support that. I don't know. But I think the odds right now, looking at just statistics, would suggest it will come to the public in November 2014. That's not a guarantee. But that will be a decision of individual legislators making up their own mind. There's nobody saying you have to do this or you have to do that. It'll be an individual decision of conscience. It's an issue of passion with many people. I know some very conservative people who have gay children who say, I don't think you should put this in the Constitution. And I say that there may be a generation or 2 from now that feel very strongly that we should go a different direction, or allow civil unions, or allow domestic partnerships. And that may be the majority opinion of the people of Indiana just a few short years from now. If we put it in the Constitution, that prevents it. So, you know, or at least theoretically it does. And a very tough issue here. You think about it, you peel this onion, it's not easy, particularly because this issue, more than any issue I've ever seen as an elected official, has dynamically moved in another direction. And it's a sign of the times and the way the world's changing on us. And it's really hard. And it's a very strong, passionate, moral issue for people on both sides. And it divides us. It's dividing the legislature right now. So that's the best answer I can give you from a kind of an insider's perspective. It's not easy. It's no fun to deal with this year. And it's a major distraction, but deal with it we will. So
Life begins at conception.
I voted for that, yeah.
This is an Agenda 21.
What, did you say an amendment?
Amendment.
No, I do not believe that. I don't think we have to put it in the Constitution of the United States. I do believe that the state of Indiana should have that right. I think it's a states' rights issue. So if you want to say, do I think each state should have the right to make its own decision? Yes, I do. It's a states' rights issue. And Indiana can be a pro-life state, and Massachusetts can be a pro-choice state. I'm okay with that. I choose to live here and live under that law. And I think pro-life will win the day in almost every state in this country, but a few. But I think it's a states' rights issue. And I think the thing that ought to happen is Roe v. Wade ought to be overturned and say that each state has the right. But like most issues, each state should decide for itself. And the people of that state should decide how they think they should be. And if people in Massachusetts want to be pro-choice, okay, I morally disagree with that. But that's that state's right. And that's the way I look at that issue. Okay? So.
It appears that legislation surrounding Agenda 21 has not made it to the floor for votes and things like that. What's the holdup here?
What is it again?
Agenda 21? It's basically,
I've yet to see the United States sovereignty of the United States being sent to any other country yet. I don't like the way the United Nations operates. I think it's still important to have the United Nations for people to be able to get together in this world and have some place to talk. But I don't like who's running a lot of their commissions and committees and where the money goes, and the hypocrisy of having Libya in charge of issues of terrorism and things like that, as they did in the past. Obviously, it's a dysfunctional entity, but I don't I mean, I guess I don't see it the same way as some do, that this issue is going to take over the sovereignty of the United States. I don't think that's ever going to happen. That doesn't mean I like the UN the way it operates. I do think it has a purpose for the people of the world to get together someplace and talk rather than duke it out, okay? And there aren't there are no other forums like that. It's just that it's abused, it's misused, its rules are skewered in such a way that we all have very little confidence in it being a very effective body. But it still has an importance for a place for the people of the world to get together somehow, at least talk things out, and I think it has value from that. That's just my take on it, guys. I know some people disagree here. I respect that. I don't see it as an issue. So.
You have like 10 more wander around, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Children to be educated, that's the bulk of where the budget goes towards, are our children. So with regards to trusting your general instincts on the concept of liberty and the empowerment of the individual over powerful establishments, many of us are disgusted at the socialist ideology that is indoctrinating our public schools. You oppose universal school choice and universal vouchers. Given that you're opposed to the freedom and liberty of the parent to decide how to best educate their child with our money.
Well, that's your opinion, but go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sure you're going to tell me everything bad about what I think.
Well, no, but you said before that you oppose universal school choice.
I do.
And being that you oppose allowing the parent to choose how best to use their funds to
I
educate
don't.
the child.
I support the ability. Let me just tell you what I think, so you don't have to tell me. Okay. My support of vouchers, I'm proud of it, and I've been a leader in that issue. And I think here's where I come down on that. I believe that people who don't have a choice should have a choice. I also believe in a strong public school system in this country. I think it's part of the freedom of this nation, one of the foundations of it. I don't like the fact that some of the things that have been going on in our schools in the past were allowed to go on, and we put some strong reforms in to change that. But I think a strong public school system is very important for our nation. And I think putting competition into the school and the education of our children is also very important to get the best we can out of our public schools. So that's how I look at it, okay? I think people who don't have a choice because of their economic situation should have one. I don't think we should doom a child to a bad school. Now, you and I have the money to be able to send our kids to private school. I don't think that imposes any infringement upon your liberty whatsoever. You can also send your child to a public school. But a parent who doesn't have the money and who cares about their child's future, who doesn't have a choice because they're stuck with a system like that, should have a choice. And that's why I support vouchers very strongly, and I stand by that. But it doesn't mean I don't support the liberty of parents to make a decision for themselves. I strongly support that. But I think we can support a strong public school system, just like I think we should support, at least historically in the past, public libraries. I may not use the library anymore, but I still support it. I may not have had a fire at my house, but I support the fire department being there in case your house catches on fire. I'm willing to pay my taxes to make sure that your house doesn't burn down. Even though I didn't make a mistake and not put a fire alarm in it, maybe you did. That doesn't matter. I support a strong police department, even though I don't commit crimes. Because I think you and I ought to live in a safe neighborhood, in a safe town, in a community. And I think public schools are the same way. They're an important foundation. It's in the Indiana Constitution. If you believe in the Constitution, as I do, and I know you do, that's the responsibility of the state of Indiana, the number one responsibility of the state legislature, to provide a set of common schools for the benefit of the children of this state. So, you and I may differ on how we define liberty. But please don't describe me as not caring about that. I care very deeply about it every day. I work for that every day. I'm proud of my record on that. And I'm way out in front of a whole lot of other people who didn't have the courage to support school choice or reforms for public schools or accountability for our schools and support for teachers who are the best teachers by giving them a bonus where they couldn't get it in the past. I think we've made major progress there. And you can be critical and throw a bomb back there and say you're not good enough, you're not doing enough, you're not this or that. But Indiana is the number one school reform state in the United States of America, and I'm proud of that, and I think you should be too. I really do. Is there another question?
Question and a comment. I don't follow your reasoning because the Fed doesn't abide by the Constitution. You're supposed to fix the Constitution. Also, Article 5, as I read it, I do not see where the states call the convention. May I read it?
Absolutely. Congress to do it, and then Congress has to call it. That's right.
The Congress, whenever 2/3, open up your little books if you've got one. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of several states, shall call a convention.
Shall, not might.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
The Congress shall propose or shall call a convention, as I read it.
Well, I don't think that's right. I think the question is, would they not call it? And that's one of the things, or if they try to call it, will they try to control it? And that's one of the reasons we're meeting, to say, if we meet, we'll control the convention. We'll vote it, and we'll vote the rules in, and we'll not allow anybody else to impose it upon us. The thing that's interesting about your question, and one that is a valid one, is, well, what if Harry Reid just refuses to bring it down, right, and do his job? Well, that's very possible with a guy like him. It's going to go to the courts. Now, if 2/3 of the states of this country are saying, we will have a constitutional convention, I don't care who's in the Supreme Court right now, I don't see them saying, not if Harry Reid doesn't say so. You will call it. It's the matter of, do they have any say in it or not, and how much say do they have? I don't think there's any choice, and I think most of the scholars I've read on this say that Congress has no choice in this matter, and the courts will so rule. And there have been rulings in the past, of course, talking about this Supreme Court where they have acknowledged that in the past, and there's precedent for that position.
One more question. Is
Yes.
the Supreme Court the final arbiter, in your opinion?
Well, since Madison versus Marbury in 1801 or 3, whenever that ruling came down, it has been recognized as such. And that's the part of the pain that we're going through today, because I think Supreme Court's rulings have skewered the Constitution. But I think they've been allowed to do it because the states have never stepped up and said, no, you don't. And that's a problem, but you do it two ways. You would say maybe nullification, and I say Article 5. And it's unfortunate that we've never got to this point until now, where I think we have enough anger and enough outrage that the states are willing to stand up for themselves. And, you know, it is just what it is. It's a sorry lack of concern, I suppose, by the legislators or the states or whatever, or a satisfaction that Congress finally did something so the momentum for an Article 5 convention stopped. But it's a fair question what you ask. What happens if? And that's part of the problem with this. I mean, like I said, there's no blueprint that says this shall happen and Congress within 30 days shall, you know, but shall means shall, and the courts have interpreted that as saying they have no choice if it's called for by 2/3 of the states. And I think if it had to go to the Supreme Court because Harry Reid refuses to do it, I think he'd be impeached personally, but that's my opinion. But if he refused to do it, I think you'd see a pretty rapid Supreme Court decision. But you know, it's all of this is, you can do the same thing with nullification. The what if never ends, you know, and and we can, as I said, chase our tails endlessly on these things, and we can stand up and do something. For me personally, this is the constitutionally given path for the states. I believe in. I think it's unassailable, and I think it will work if we put our minds to it and our heft to it. Last question? Yeah.
Mr. Long, thank you as well as I do. I've known David Long for 42 years. I watched him as his political and moral values developed. I agree with him much of the time, but not always. But one thing I do agree with is the way he processes his decisions. Would you speak to this crowd about that process right now?
Where's I got a quarter here? That's what Rick thinks I would do. I just flip it up because I haven't got anything. But I do have I think a process I go through. I listen and I read and I think, and I try to understand the issue as well as I can by listening to all sides of it. I try not to be knee-jerk in a response to any issue if I can avoid it. I think in the end, it's a republic, which means that I'm elected to use my skull in there. And people who don't think I'm using it very well will vote me out if I don't. But I don't think I have to take a poll on every vote. And if 2,000 people say yes and 1,900 say no, I got to go with the 2,000. I think the people elected me to be a thoughtful person who arrives at these decisions by deliberation and by listening and by discussing this and by arriving at a solution, a path that I think is the right one. So, and I think that's our job. And, you know, if we're not doing it, I respect the voters' ability to decipher that and say, you know what, you don't stand for things I believe in anymore. Time for you to get the heck out. And there's two ways to do that, ballot box or term limits, right? And people go to term limits because not enough people are paying attention at times. That's unfortunate, you know, and that's why, you know, in anger, some of these term limit laws have been put in that they're so short that I think they're ineffective and have an opposite effect, and the bureaucrats are running the state. That's not good either. So I do think a balanced term limits for federal, for state, and for judges makes sense, and that's why. But thank you, Ron, for asking me that. I don't think I've ever been asked that before, but that's how I try to arrive at a decision, and I think that's, I really do think there's so much cynicism out there, but I look at the people I work with, and there's a few that I would say, yeah, you should be cynical about them, but for the most part, these are good men and women that really do try to do the right thing, and do care about their communities, care deeply and passionately about our state, and they're trying to do what's best and trying to have a compass and find the right direction for the state. You know, I'm proud of the last 10 years we've done. I know Rick can criticize me and say, you're not good enough on school choice. I understand you disagree with me, but we're doing good things here in this state on that issue. We're leading the country on these issues. And that's a long way from where we were a few years ago. And, you know, you ought to be feeling good about that too. Should we always be satisfied? Never. And should you guys throw me out if you think I've spoken too long tonight? Absolutely. So I'm going to stop right there. Okay? Thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it.